ADR. Promoting dialogue.
It's 6 p.m. in Dakar and Abidjan. Good evening and thank you for staying tuned to West Africa, the Democracy Radio, broadcasting on 94.9 FM and worldwide at wadr.org. Welcome to Newslink. First, the top stories. President Tinubu passes amendment bill to Nigerian Senate seeking creation of state police to address insecurity. Ghanaian government revokes all firearm licenses in major gun control shakeup.
In the last 2 months, we've seen increase in such individuals committing suicide with firearms that are registered.
Burkina Faso's foreign ministry summons EU representative in Ouagadougou over remarks it says undermine state authority.
By acting this way, the European Parliament has violated the principle of non-interference. It is also a sign of contempt towards us.
Beyond West Africa, nearly 3 million children at risk of Ebola in the DRC, says UNICEF. Please stay tuned for details of these stories and more.
On the news, this is Augustine Bill Coley.
Thank you for being with us. President Bola Ahmed Tinubu has transmitted a constitutional amendment bill seeking the establishment of state police to the Senate, marking a significant step in ongoing efforts to reform Nigeria's security architecture. The proposer is expected to provide the legal framework for a dual policing system that would allow states to establish and operate their own police services alongside the Nigeria Police Force. Our correspondent Yechenu Sasetu tells us more.
The push for state police gained fresh momentum after President Bola Tinubu formally forwarded a constitutional amendment bill on the proposal to the Senate. The legislation seeks to amend relevant provisions of the 1999 Constitution to enable the creation of state police across the Federation. The bill was read during plenary by Senate President Godswill Akpabio, who subsequently referred it to the Senate Committee on Constitution Review for consideration. According to the President, the proposal is a critical part of efforts to reorganize Nigeria's policing system and improve the country's response to security challenges. The bill also seeks to give communities and local authorities a greater role in maintaining security. The development comes weeks after the House of Representatives passed a similar constitutional amendment bill and amid growing calls for decentralized policing to tackle insecurity across different parts of the country. Supporters argue that state police would improve intelligence gathering, strengthen community policing, and enhance emergency response, while critics have expressed concerns about possible political abuse and funding challenges. If approved by the National Assembly, the proposal will still require endorsement by at least 2/3 of state houses of assembly before it can become part of the Constitution. For WADR, Yechenu Sasetu in Abuja.
Still in Nigeria, authorities in the Central Plateau State say at least 20 people were killed in the weekend attack on a community in the Bokos district. The latest violence highlights ongoing security challenges in the region, which has been repeatedly hit by deadly communal clashes. These armed attacks occurred despite increased security deployments and government efforts to restore peace in the fragile zone of the country. Officials say investigations are underway while security forces have been deployed to prevent further attacks in the region. Elsewhere, Ghana has announced a major overhaul of its firearms licensing system, revoking all existing gun permits and requiring firearm owners to reapply under stricter regulations. Under the new framework, applicants will be required to undergo mental health assessments, drug screening, and firearm safety training before obtaining a license. Interior Minister Muntagal Mohammed Mubarak said the measures are aimed at improving public safety and ensuring that only responsible and qualified individuals are allowed to possess firearms. The minister cited concerns over cases in which licensed gun owners have used their weapons to take their own lives, highlighting the need for tighter controls.
The very affluent that come forward to register sidearms or firearms are now using them to commit suicide. In the last 2 months, we've seen increase in such individuals committing suicide with firearms that are registered. Because of that, from this afternoon, all permits that have been granted to any individual that you are holding a sidearm or firearm is hereby revoked. We are revoking that, and we are opening a window where everyone will have to come forward again to register or to re-register the gun, because we've changed the procedure. We've realized that there's a short gap in the registration procedure that will be useful. Some will say that why not wait till December? In 6 months, we could still save a lot more life. We've seen that people with mental health had already gone through and have the sidearm. Now we are introducing mental health. Before we give you the sidearm, we have to be sure that you have the mental stability to hold the firearms. We also realize that people who are on drugs are also holding the arms, and they are legitimate because it's been registered. Now you have to go through drug tests to be sure that you are not on drugs before you can hold sidearms.
Ghana's Minister of the Interior, Mutagal Mohamed Mubarak Des, speaking. Let's take you to Benin, where a police outpost was the target of an attack by unidentified armed men who stormed the Fort Wadr community over the weekend. Sources say the attackers stormed the station, briefly overpowered officers on duty, causing material damage before fleeing the scene. While the situation is now under control, authorities have launched an assessment to determine the extent of the damage. Francis Boniface tells us more.
According to sources, heavily armed men late Saturday, precisely around 11 p.m., stormed the police station and opened fire on officers, reportedly entering the facility from the rear. Security personnel responded but were forced to withdraw due to the intensity of the attack. The assailants then searched the premises before fleeing. They are believed to have taken away unspecified equipment, although details have not yet been confirmed. No deaths or injury were recorded, but material damage has been reported. Contacted by WADR, the head of the Fort-Wadr arrondissement, Sao Sabi Koku, confirmed the incident and said an inventory is on the way to determine what may have been taken. He added that calm has returned to the area and that the station has been resecured by defense and security forces. The Fort-Wadr station is among several security posts in northern Benin that have been repeatedly targeted in similar attacks. Authorities continue to describe the security situation in northern Benin as a major concern, with efforts ongoing to strengthen the response to extremist violence and improve cross-border security cooperation in the region.
Francis Boniface reporting there.
More stories coming up on West Africa Democracy Radio. Newslink continues.
Senegalese President Bassirou Diomaye Faye has called for stronger international support in tackling terrorism as security concerns continue to mount across the Sahel. The appeal came during talks with German Chancellor Friedrich Merz in Berlin on Tuesday, where both leaders discussed the security situation in the Sahel and the future of cooperation between West Africa and its international partners. According to the Senegalese president, Bassirou Diomaye Faye stressed the need for sustained support for countries in the region while reaffirming Senegal's commitment to dialogue and the peaceful resolution of conflicts. The meeting comes at a crucial moment for Dakar, which is expected to assume the rotating presidency of the ECOWAS Commission in the coming months. Authorities in Burkina Faso have summoned the European Union ambassador in Ouagadougou to protest a European Parliament resolution and comments by its member Christopher Gomat on the country's security situation. Ouagadougou strongly rejects the remarks, describing them as false, inaccurate, and a violation of the principle of non-interference. Veronique Njai has the details.
The European Union ambassador in Ouagadougou responded early Monday to the foreign minister's summons. Philippe Prochain came to explain the remarks made by European Parliament member Christophe Gommard, who accuses the Burkinabe authorities of failing in the fight against terrorism.
I took the opportunity to once again explain how the European Union works. As I told the Minister of Foreign Affairs, I have taken note of everything he said, and I will pass on the information he provided to my superiors in Brussels.
Burkina Faso describes French General Christophe Gommard's comments as erroneous. According to Burkina Faso's Minister of Foreign Affairs, Karamoko Jean-Marie Traoré, by adopting a resolution based on this assessment, the European Parliament is violating the principle of non-interference.
By acting this way, the European Parliament has violated the principle of non-interference. The arguments presented to members of Parliament are based on completely erroneous information. It is also a sign of contempt towards us, reflecting a lack of understanding of the efforts currently underway.
The resolution in question was adopted on June 18. In it, the European Parliament also condemns the deterioration of civic space in Burkina Faso and calls on the Burkinabe authorities to guarantee freedom of association and expression.
A report by Martin Kaba in Ouagadougou and voiced by Veronique Njai. The World Bank has approved a $200 million financing package for Togo, equivalent to more than 115 billion CFA francs. The funding is aimed at improving the country's transport and logistics systems, including upgrades to rail infrastructure, urban mobility, and access road servicing agricultural communities. The project is expected to boost trade, create jobs, reduce transport bottlenecks, and improve access to markets and essential services for millions of people across the country. For more on this story, let's join Sankulu Janko.
The 115 billion CFA or $200 million envelope approved by the World Bank is intended to support major transport and logistics innovations in Togo. The project aims to modernize the country's transport network through the rehabilitation of a railway line linking the port of Lomé to the industrial platform located in the northeast of the capital. It will also improve urban mobility in Greater Lomé and open agricultural areas to facilitate the movement of goods and reduce post-harvest losses. According to the Global Financial Institution, the first phase of the program will focus on easing congestion around the port of Lomé, one of West Africa's busiest maritime hubs. The initiative is expected to create jobs, improve living conditions of about 2.2 million rural residents, and rehabilitate feeder roads connecting farming communities to markets across the country. The project is also expected to benefit thousands of people, particularly women, in the Savane Kara, Plateau, and Montplain regions by improving access to essential services and expanding economic opportunities. Togo now joins the list of West African countries such as Burkina Faso, Niger, the Gambia, Benin, Liberia, and Sierra Leone to have received financial approvals from the World Bank for national projects.
A report from our Lomé correspondent Ida Bajo and presented by Sankulu Janko. Let's now bring you some electoral developments. First, in Burkina Faso, Cote d'Ivoire, the government has begun consultations with political parties and civil society organizations on establishing a new electoral management body. The discussions come several months after the dissolution of the Independent Electoral Commission and form part of ongoing efforts to reform the country's electoral system. Authorities say the consultations are aimed at building consensus around a new institution that will oversee future elections and strengthen confidence in the electoral process. Robert Mambe is the Ivorian Prime Minister.
It will be an electoral mechanism capable of guaranteeing the integrity of the practical organization of the vote, the accuracy of vote counting, the transparency of the announcement of results, and the credibility of the overall supervision of the process. Secondly, it will further strengthen confidence at every critical stage of the electoral process. Thirdly, it will ensure neutrality in its composition, remain professional in its operations, and always be transparent and credible in its decisions. It will comply with the law and remain accessible to citizens.
Ivorian Prime Minister Robert Mambe speaking. In neighboring Liberia, lawmakers have commenced a public hearing to review the country's electoral law as recommended by development partners after the 2023 general elections. However, some of the proposed reforms, including an increase in the registration fees for candidates at different levels, the voter registration process, and the reduction in voting hours, are drawing mixed reactions. Several opposition political parties, including media advocates and citizens, are also weighing in on the matter. Ibrahim Paco has more in the following report.
On Monday, the Liberian Senate began the review of several electoral proposals, including an increase in nomination fees, $15,000 for presidential candidates, $10,000 for vice presidents, $5,000 for senators, and $3,000 for representatives. The measures have drawn criticism from opposition parties, including the Congress for Democratic Change and Alternative National Congress, who warn that the higher fees could limit political participation and block ordinary citizens from contesting elections. Concerns have also been raised over plans to restrict voter registration to national ID cards and passports. Mariah Yakula is AMC's representative.
This law restricting verification to passports and national ID card actually is going to disenfranchise thousands of Liberians who may not have access to national ID card or passports in the villages.
The opposition Congress for Democratic Change have further questioned the proposals to reduce voting hours and to strengthen the time frame for filing electoral complaints. The Press Union of Liberia has urged clearer rules on voter identification and dispute resolution. Popular reactions remain divided as the Senate consultations continue. As a reminder, the European Union and the development partners had recommended a series of reforms to strengthen the electoral system after the 2023 elections. For Newslink on WADR, Abraham Parker, Monrovia.
You are listening to Newslink live on West Africa, Democracy Radio 94.9 FM and online at wadr.org. Here is a reminder of our top stories. President Tinubu passes amendment bill to Nigerian Senate seeking creation of state police to address insecurity. Ghanaian government revokes all firearms licenses in major gun control shakeup. Burkina Faso's foreign ministry summons EU representative in Ouagadougou over remarks it says undermine state authority. Still ahead, nearly 3 million children are at risk of Ebola in the DRC, says UNHCR. We have the press review, that's rather guest interview and sports news, so please stay with us.
Fresh and breaking news all the time. Hear it first as the news breaks, only on West Africa Democracy Radio. Newslink continues.
Thank you for being with us. We are streaming live on YouTube at WADR and on Facebook, WADR English Service. Now, beyond West Africa, the United Nations Children Agency, UNICEF, warns that nearly 3 million children and adolescents in Eastern Democratic Republic of Congo face growing health and social risks as the Ebola outbreak continues to spread. The UN agency says about 2.95 million people under the age of 18 live in the 31 health zones affected by the epidemic, accounting for more than half of the affected population. Usma Uma tells us more.
UNICEF Executive Director Catherine Russell said many children have lost one or both parents to the disease, particularly in Ituri province, the current epicenter of the outbreak. She also expressed concern over rumors and misinformation that are hampering response efforts. The agency says it is providing psychological support to 135 children orphaned by the outbreak and has opened a nursery for infants temporarily separated from their parents during treatment. UNICEF adds that the crisis is worsening the challenges already faced by children in Eastern DRC, including malnutrition, conflict and displacement. Others are limited access to healthcare, education, clean water and other essential services. As of June 19, children and adolescents represented nearly 15% of confirmed Ebola cases and more than a quarter of all deaths. The UN institution maintains that young people infected with the virus face a significantly higher risk of death than adults. To this end, the organization is urging continued collaboration with authorities, the World Health Organization, and the Africa CDC to strengthen prevention, contact tracing, community mobilization, and the continuity of essential services. Latest figures indicate the current Ebola infection has surpassed 1,000, with more than 260 deaths, mainly in DRC and Uganda.
Usma Uma fight that report.
Politics, analysis on major news, social matters, and all. This is a guest.
Well, West Africa is moving deeper into the 2026 rainy season with growing concern over clearly warning systems as flood risks increase across the region. So far, citing including Abidjan, Accra, Niamey, Lomé, and Lagos as cities experiencing flooding, leading to loss of lives and significant property damage. The question now remains about how effective early warning systems and flood preparedness are across West Africa as several urban areas continue to record rising flood levels. Olamide Martins Ogonli is Associate Director of Climate Change and Extractives at the Corporate Accountability and Public Participation Africa.
The flood risk across West Africa this year is going to be significant, and that is not to raise fears, particularly as rainfall intensifies across, shared river basins, such as the one we have in Niger, some part of Senegal, and even in Côte d'Ivoire that you mentioned. So it is feared that countries including Nigeria, Benin Republic, Niger Republic, Ghana, Mali, and some part of Burkina Faso are going to experience elevated exposure this year due to saturated soil, of course, and due to the rise in river levels, and also due to increasing erratic rainfall patterns. No thanks to climate change, everything now seems to be on the excessive side. So this year, like last year, we expect a fall, and also going by the feedbacks that we are getting from institutions responsible for weather prediction, for instance, the Nigeria Meteorological Agency, NIMET, and the Nigeria Hydrological Services Agency, and of course from findings across the ECOWAS states. We have been warned that 2025 is going to be a child's play compared to the flood that might happen this year.
But what are some of the other factors, say, country to country, that may increase the risk of flooding, as reported already in Abidjan, in Accra, the capital of Ghana, and Niamey, the capital of Niger?
It's going to be a combination of several factors: rise in sea level, environmental factor, and also governance-related factors. They are all going to combine to drive flooding across West Africa this year. And this includes increasingly intense seasonal rainfall that have been linked to climate vulnerability and rapid and often unplanned urbanization. If you are familiar with Nigeria, Lagos, where I'm joining this call from, we seem to be driving very fast on our drive towards urbanization. And we are filling up our spaces. We are not paying adequate attention to our drainage infrastructure. There is pressure on our expansion, on our settlement expansion. And of course, I know this is the reality also in Accra, in Bamako, in Niamey that you mentioned. Environmental degradation, including deforestation, will also play a huge role. Part of the area, we are experiencing desertification, but then water, we have to come down through the wetland. The remaining will leak through the wetland. And of course, there will be structural vulnerabilities that will be intensified by climate change as well. So these are just some of the factors that will contribute to the recurrence this year. And that's quite unfortunate.
You did actually say that several meteorological organizations in respective countries have warned that the flooding situation may intensify this year, meaning that we do have early warning systems in place. But the question is, are governments, per your assessment, utilizing these reports or indicators to plan better or to reduce the impact of flooding? Have you seen that?
No, and I think that is where the problem is. We have government agencies that are operating in silos. There is no coordination, there is no communication, and there is no exchange of information. For instance, NIMET would year in, year out predict flooding and even issue cautions. But then you have NEMA, and I'm talking about Nigeria now. You have NEMA, whose mandate is to react to incidences that have been cautioned by NIMET. Everybody seems to be working in silo, in isolated intervention, so to say. Yes, there are warning system in West Africa through NIMET, through the National Disaster Management Agency in Ghana, for instance. but effectiveness remains uneven. We have capacity to make forecasts, but then what do we do with those forecasts? What do we do with the information, with the caution? There are questions about coordination that we need to ask ourselves. And we've seen for a fact how vulnerable populations still do not receive warnings on time. Yes, there are cautions that are being released only to the privileged few who are in the urban centers who could read data. But how about those who are in the suburbs, those who are in the communities? What deliberate efforts are being made by the state, even by individuals, organizations, to communicate this forecast to them? So we are not in short supply of warning systems, like you rightly mentioned. It's about what we do with those cautions. It's about our responses to those cautions. And more importantly, we expect that government agencies will now begin to have handshake and to work with other responsible agencies of government to educate the masses on what should be done, and even to go further, and enforce dialogue on the state by ensuring that the state commits to resources that would provide, drainage infrastructures and the like. Otherwise, it's going to be a yearly release of caution that will address little or nothing.
Olamide Martins Ogonle is the Associate Director for Climate Change and Extractives at Corporate Accountability and Public Participation Africa, known as CAPA. Well, in the sporting world, arenas and viewing centers are boozing with the thrilling performances and electrifying push for wins. And my colleague Abdullahi Hassan is in the studio to discuss the trends. How are you doing, Abdullahi? Welcome.
I'm good, Augustine, and good evening to you out there. Indeed, like you said, three exciting matches lit up the tournament on Monday with Argentina, Egypt, and France, all claim important victories as the race for the knockout stage gathers pace.
What happened in Group K so far?
Indeed, Augustine, in Group K, France secured a place in the round of 32 of the 2026 FIFA World Cup with a comfortable 3-0 victory over Iraq in Philadelphia. Kylian Mbappe scored twice, with Ousmane Dembele added a third goal as Didier Deschamps' side claimed their second consecutive win of the tournament.
Well, let's come to Senegal facing an uphill battle after Norway's defeat.
Well, Senegal's hope, at World Cup kind of suffered a major setback after a 3-2 loss to Norway. Erling Haaland scored twice for Norway, while Ismail Assar netted a brace for the Teranga Lions. Despite a late fight back, Senegal fell to a second straight defeat.
What should we say about Senegal's hope right now? Is it possible?
It all depends, but again, the hopes are still high.
Okay, we keep following. But now, what are the teams playing?
Well, currently ongoing, we have Portugal and Uzbekistan. Cristiano Ronaldo's team is leading the game 4-0, with him scoring 2 out of the 4 goals. Later this evening, we will watch the much anticipated playoff between England and Ghana, Panama against Croatia, and lastly at 2 a.m. Colombia versus DRC.
So West African team is playing again tonight.
And given their last performance, the hopes are high that the Black Stars of Ghana will put up a show. But then remember, this is England. It's another very strong team out there.
Yeah. But we'll keep following, and the hopes are high, like you said. Thank you, Abdullahi Hassan. With that, we've come to the end of this edition of Newslink on West Africa Democracy Radio, broadcasting from Dakar, Senegal. Thank you for listening. Many thanks to Mustafa Sek and Maudoju for the technical support. Do interact with us via our social media platforms, X, Instagram, and Facebook at WADR. We also stream live at WADR.org. I am Augustine Curley. Good evening.
We thank you for listening to Newslink in Nigeria on Love FM Abuja and Darling FM Owerri. In the Gambia on Hot FM Banjul, Hilltop FM and Veritas Radio in Serekunda. Thank you for listening on Alternative Youth Radio Lofa County, Liberia, Radio Kegaman in Nimba County, and DCN Radio Riverses County. A big thank you to Radio Baft FM in Sierra Leone for listening, and in Ghana we thank Radio Pad in Damango and Royals FM in Wenchi. Thank you all for listening to Newslink.